Greetings from Austin, Texas. It's yet another travel video. I haven't made one in quite some time. I got here yesterday from Dallas. I was in Dallas for a work conference and I figured I would stay an extra night in Dallas and then spend the weekend in Austin. So I drove to Austin, which is 3 hours away by car from Dallas. I've been to both of these cities before. Some of you might remember my travel videos about Dallas and about Austin. A long time ago. Dallas was 2 years ago at the time of this video. I went in 2021 out of curiosity, and Austin was part of my trip when I started kind of playing nomad in 2018. For 6 weeks, I went city to city in the American South, and Austin was one of my stops. So that was 5 years ago. So to be honest, I wasn't planning on coming back to either of these cities, but because work led me to Dallas, I figured I would make a pit stop in Austin as well. And I was very curious to see how my experiences would be different this time, if at all. I figured Dallas would be very similar, right? It was only 2 years ago that I went, but Austin, it was 5 years ago. And in the last 5 years, a lot has happened, in particular with Austin's evolution, right? Austin is one of these cities that there has been a mass migration to in recent years, and the pandemic had a huge impact on that. Because of the restrictions, the COVID restrictions with the pandemic, a lot of people moved to Texas in general because it was just a more carefree, I guess, state, just like Florida. A lot of people moved to Miami as well during the pandemic to avoid the restrictions of other states like New York, California, and so on, right? So there was a mass exodus. And also just financially speaking and legally speaking, it's cheaper for people to live here. There are no state income taxes and it's cheaper for companies to run here. So point is, I was curious to see how Austin has changed, if at all, since I last came in 2018. By the way, if you guys are curious about those original videos that I'm referring to, where I talked about my first impression and first experience in Dallas or in Austin, you can check them out on my channel. I'll add them to the description box here and in the comments. This video, I want to focus on the distinction between these two cities now that back to back I went to both again. So let's start out with Dallas. Dallas is a very industrial city, which is kind of my takeaway from all the Texan cities that I've been to. Austin is the one that's a little bit different. It's still industrial enough, but I would say it's more culturally pleasant, if we can say that, versus a city that feels purely industrial and business oriented. So Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, I've made videos about each of these cities. All of them are very industrial cities. So what I mean by that is, like, you don't really have much to do as a tourist. Like, they're not tourism oriented cities. They really are cities where if you're visiting, you're likely there because of work, right? A conference, very convention heavy cities, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. So a lot of these like mega chain hotels, these are very spacious, sprawled out cities, right? So a lot of these huge convention centers and arenas and all of that, which again is why I was there, right? I was there for a work conference in Dallas. So beyond that, they're not very exciting or dynamic cities. Austin is notorious for being more dynamic, more lively, more youthful as well. There's the University of Texas, the Austin location here. Definitely noticeable just walking around that there's college students. It's a very community-oriented, not just college, but town. Like, I was here during, I guess, a football game weekend or whatever, so a lot of people at bars, like sports bars, watching these football games in their, like jerseys and teams that they support, like merchandise, sweatshirts and stuff. So it's kind of cool to see that, like, as somebody who's lived in cities that are so not sports focused, or like that's not the biggest focus, right? Like New York City, yes, has sports teams, but there's so many things going on in New York City that sports aren't a dominant part of the culture. Same with Los Angeles and same with Miami, right? Texas is very sort of that old school traditional Americana culture, and you definitely feel it here. So it was kind of cool, I will say, walking around Austin, seeing that camaraderie. That's not something that I felt in Dallas. However, I do want to talk about the Roundup Saloon, this gay bar that I went to, in a bit, and I'll talk about how I did feel community sense there. But first, talking about first impressions versus how these cities are now. Dallas is still basically, I feel like it's right where I left it 2 years ago. Like it's the same, again, very industrial. It's kind of a little bit sterile. It's not that exciting as a city. But I will say I had a better experience this time. The last time I stayed in Oak Lawn, which is like the younger, trendier, and also gay neighborhood. I find it really cool that there's such a prominent gay neighborhood in Dallas, considering Dallas is like that old Texan, old money, conservative, more traditional vibe. I think it's really cool that there's a thriving gay neighborhood. And when I say gay neighborhood, it's not just gay bars, it's like gay establishments, like gay owned restaurants and like brunch spots. And you feel that there's like a community there. So that was kind of cool. This time I did not stay in Oak Lawn. I stayed in the West Village. It's funny to me that Dallas has a West Village. West Village is a very famous neighborhood in New York City. I think it's funny when cities like adopt these names as kind of like a nod to a more major metropolis like New York City. Miami, by the way, is the same way. There's a neighborhood in Miami called the Upper East Side, which is, of course, a reference to New York City. But anyway, I stayed in the West Village of Dallas. And it was really cute. Like it was a really cute neighborhood. And again, last time I was in Dallas, I felt, despite staying in the gay neighborhood, you know, gay neighborhoods typically are a little nicer aesthetically. But Oak Lawn, I remember, still felt very, again, industrial to me. Meaning like sometimes you're walking down the street and it's just cars going by and not as much foot traffic. The West Village in Dallas is very walkable, very cute. Shops, restaurants, like little, you know, cute hole-in-the-wall like ice cream parlors. So I enjoyed staying in this neighborhood called the West Village. What's also really nice about the West Village and Oak Lawn is that it's bordered by this really long trail, this park, and this like hiking, or I guess it's not really hiking, but like a walking, running, biking trail. So again, in a more like industrial city, to have that right there is nice. Like it's always nice in these kinds of urban cities to have a part that's more natural and kind of, you can be more synced into those natural elements and not like right next to a skyscraper and, you know, a huge road with a bunch of cars speeding by, right? So Austin, on the other hand, yes, it's still a city. Yes, there's definitely buildings and it's industrial to an extent, but Austin is considered, and if there's any local Texans watching this or anybody who's familiar with these cities, I would love to hear your feedback. But it seems to me like Austin is the one major city in Texas that is more sort of cultural. Like people do come to Austin for things beyond work, things beyond like, you know, like a work conference. People come here for sports games. Again, there's the college presence here. People come here for music festivals. There's several very well-known music festivals in Austin. Austin City Limits, there's South by Southwest, right? These are very well-known festivals. Austin is also more outdoors oriented. People do come here to hike, not right in the city center, but like if you go to the outskirts, I know that locals will go to lakes here as well, and that there's apparently really nice lakes here. And Austin also has this like hipster flavor. There's an eccentric edge to Austin that I think is why people sort of separate it from the other Texan cities like Dallas, like Houston, that feel more corporate, feel more old school, traditional, and more conservative. Austin is like the really liberal city out of all these cities. And even just walking around, like that hipster component is very prominent here. And it makes sense, again, because these music festivals, right, are more sort of alternative, indie music oriented, and the community here is very much like that. So it's just funny to me because, you know, I was talking about New York City a little bit ago. If I compare it to my time living in New York City, Dallas feels more like corporate Manhattan, like Midtown, Upper East Side, more conservative or preppy. But then it's like you take the Brooklyn Bridge and go to like a hipster part of Brooklyn, and that's what Austin reminds me of. They really try to lean into like, we're different, it's alternative. I think the slogan for Austin is actually keep Austin weird. I don't love Austin as a city, and I didn't love it in 2018. I remember being really underwhelmed because people hype it up so much. I will also say that when I came here 5 years ago, the weather was terrible. It rained the whole time, so I didn't explore as much on foot. This time, walking on foot, first of all, the weather was amazing here, so that always helps. I walked around quite a bit, and I stumbled upon this part of downtown Austin that I had totally missed 5 years ago. And this is the part that I think people always rave about. Like, this is the part that I missed 5 years ago. There's a strip in downtown Austin, I think it's on 6th Street, and it's like block after block after block of bars. And I'm not just saying like, one bar here and then there's, like a store next to it and then another bar 3 blocks down. I'm saying it's like on one block, you have 5 bars nestled together. And what's kind of neat is they're each a different vibe. I've noticed there's an arcade culture here. A lot of the bars have an arcade, like they have ping ball machines and what do you call the one where you throw? I think it's called skee ball, right? Anyway, you see those kinds of like sports bar games. Then you have the much more traditional sports bars with like mega screens everywhere showing the football games. And then you have the weird bars, right? That kind of lean into that eccentricness, the spookiness that I think comes up a lot in southern towns, right? Like the Southern Gothic kind of culture. So in that sense, it actually kind of reminded me, this part of downtown Austin, of New Orleans, but like a bit cleaner, more polished, actually a lot cleaner and more polished than New Orleans. But that neighborhood, you can tell people just go there with their friends to bar hop. In terms of camaraderie, like it could be fun to go there and bar hop with your friends for a weekend. You'll see those trolleys, or not trolleys, what do you call them? Like the vehicles where people pedal while drinking, and the pedaling is what makes the vehicle go forth. I don't know if there's a word to it. I don't think trolley is the right word, but it's that kind of place. So in that sense, I get why people like Austin, because it is very youthful and like lively. But the thing is, if bar culture is not your thing, right? Like if you're sober, you're not gonna have fun in that neighborhood, which is like the heart of, the dynamic, lively part, the nightlife of Austin. And also, even if you are into that, right? As somebody who's lived in places like New York City, LA, Miami, cities that I think are more dynamic than here, than Austin or Dallas, it gets old after a while, right? It's like you can only go bar hopping so many times. Even for me, it was fun to check out for one night, but then I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't want to be, I'm just at an age where I don't want to be around like drunk people all night. So Austin, I got a better impression than I did in 2018. It feels different to me, but maybe I missed out on that. Maybe downtown Austin, that part with all these bars everywhere, that again reminded me very much of the French Quarter in New Orleans, if you're familiar with that part of New Orleans. Perhaps I missed it last time, and perhaps it's also grown tremendously since this mass migration during the pandemic. I'm not sure. If you do know, please share in the comments. But definitely Austin, I had a better impression this time than last time, and it's more fun objectively than a place like Dallas. I think Dallas is like a settled down place. Like, I passed some homes and like new apartment buildings that just looked like it's comfortable. You have your spot to settle down, probably more family oriented and just calmer than a place like Austin. But it's not for everybody. Dallas does feel much more corporate and traditional. Now let's talk about the men. Let's talk about the actual gay part of it. Gay bars, gay guys on apps, and all this. So I mentioned before the Roundup Saloon. If you go to Dallas, you can only go to one bar. You only have time for one bar. You're only there for one night. Go to the Roundup Saloon. If you're not from the South, I think you will be fascinated by the Roundup Saloon, because I was fascinated. So this is a gay bar, and it's in the gay part, like the gay neighborhood of Dallas, which is called Oak Lawn. The Roundup Saloon is just like it sounds. It's a saloon vibe. Very like country western bar. So you see guys wearing cowboy hats, wearing flannel shirts, but here's the kicker. There's a dance floor, which is very common with a gay bar, right? But people are square dancing. Now, if you're not from America, you might not know what square dancing is. Square dancing is this traditional cultural dance that exists in the South. As somebody who is not familiar with this culture, it was fascinating to me to go to a gay bar that if I didn't know it was a gay bar, I wouldn't have realized it. Like, obviously it's mostly men, but it doesn't feel like a gay bar, right? It's a country western saloon. People are square dancing. And what I liked is the guys are like everyday guys. A lot of like average Joes, everyday people, as opposed to what I'm used to, like in Miami. If you go to a gay bar in Miami, it's just very in your face, you know, guys wearing fishnets and like, it's very over the top and very extra. This is more subtle, again, everyday people. So to me, it's refreshing because I'm not used to that, right? In a sense, it kind of reminded me of the Eagle. If you guys are familiar with the bar, the Eagle, I've talked about it before on this channel. That's a bar that attracts a lot of more like regular guys as opposed to like this stereotype. Now, that being said, I did meet a guy in Dallas who told me that he gets why from the outside it looks like that, but that he was saying a lot of that is because it's a more conservative city, Dallas, and it's Texas, a lot of those guys carry with them like a toxic edge of trying to overcompensate for not fitting into the gay community, the gay world, and like being very, like, I don't want to be associated with that kind of thing. So of course, when you're visiting, there's a novelty factor and maybe you find it enchanting, but he was kind of telling me like it gets old. So again, even beyond this one bar, it's the only gay bar that I went to this time. The last time I went to Dallas, I explored a few others, but this time I just felt like going to this one. Then I went home. By the way, I got recognized at the bar, which I thought was so neat. This guy approached me and was like, "Are you the guy from YouTube?" And I was just so stunned because that happens to me about once a year that somebody will recognize me, and my channel is small. At the time of this video, I have 5,000 subscribers. So it's so cool to me to think that I've been noticed, that, you know, there's so many people watching your videos that you have no idea. But the fact that I've been noticed or recognized in 4 completely different cities, different corners of the country is so cool to me. After I went home from the Roundup Saloon, I thought about it and I was like, okay, one time I got recognized in New York City at the Eagle, one time in Miami just walking down the street in my neighborhood, one time in Dallas now, and then one time in San Diego. Like, how cool is that? These are totally different parts of the country. And I've had people approach me saying, hey, thank you for your videos. I learned something each time. So if you're watching this, if you're the guy who I met at the saloon, the Roundup Saloon, thank you for that. Thank you for approaching me. And hopefully you're still watching my videos. Anyway, so yeah, so Dallas has a true gay neighborhood, which to me is very cool because, again, Dallas, I think of it as a conservative, you know, old money Texan kind of city. So it's cool to me that it has a true gay neighborhood. Austin also has a true gay neighborhood, but I think Austin is so youthful and lively that I'm willing to bet there's more of a cross-pollination effect, kind of like Los Angeles or New York City or Miami, where a lot of the gay guys don't even go to the gay bars because there's so many bars in general in that area of downtown Austin. Now let's talk about the men themselves. It's always interesting to me how people tend to parallel or like mirror the city they live in and vice versa, right? So Dallas is more conservative, again, more corporate, traditional. I know I keep using the same words, but those are the words that come to mind. You see that in the guys. So on these apps, a lot of guys who are maybe more preppy, more sort of polished, maybe like what you'd expect in Washington, D.C., if you've been to D.C. So again, for me, it's so neat to see that because living in Miami, I'm used to people just being so trashy on apps and being in like a thong in all their photos, even on like a more serious dating app like Bumble. So it was refreshing for me to see that. I remember 2 years ago in Dallas being like, what is in the water here? Because all the men are so tall. Like, I'm not talking 6 feet or 6'2". I'm talking like 6'5", 6'7", 6'10". So if you're into that, come to Dallas. Also, I just feel people are nicer here. Like, guys were more respectful to me on apps with the messages they would send. One guy sent a pickup line message that was like, are you tired of being so good looking? Or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. But I thought it was sweet and endearing because where I live in Miami and other cities I've lived in the past, people don't even care enough to put in the effort of like a pickup line or making a decent introduction, you know, especially on apps like Grindr. It's just like, sup, pics, question mark, like, so that for me is endearing here. And it's interesting that a city like Dallas and even Austin, I don't think could stimulate me enough to live here, but it's refreshing to be exposed to just nicer guys. Austin, again, you feel the hipster thing with guys here. Like the guys are just more alternative. What do I mean by that? So like more tatted up, more sort of playing around with ideas of gender, I think, and like presentation of self. What's a more specific example? Like wearing pearls, right? That's something I see a lot now in Miami. You see that in Austin. In Dallas, you're not gonna see guys wearing pearls as much. If you have any specific questions about my experience here, let me know. Of course, I'm only a visitor. I'm not an expert on Austin or Dallas. I've only been to these two cities twice now, but I feel like I've gotten a good idea of what life is like here, what the cities are like, and what gay dating, gay life would be like here. I think it's important to mention that, you know, you hear about Texas in the media and, you know, Texas, we think it's this like super conservative place. Of course, I'm sure there are parts of Texas that are way more conservative and way more old school. But in general, as a gay person in these two cities, I felt very comfortable and very at ease. And I think the South really does have this stereotype of being really archaic and anti-gay. Of course, again, there are parts of the South that are like this. I really think a lot of these bigger cities in the South get a bad reputation, and the culture is shifting, has been shifting, and is continuing to keep shifting as more and more people immigrate to these less prominent cities, right? Versus, let's say, San Francisco or New York City, or more traditional metropolis. And it just makes me wonder what Dallas will be like in 20 years and what Austin will be like in 20 years. I have another work conference in 10 days, so that's gonna make me hop over to a few other places. I should be making videos there. I'm excited to explore more of the South. I have kind of a fascination with the South. So I'm curious to see more and curious what you guys think. Again, if you're familiar with these cities of Texas, I wanna know your feedback. Let me know in the comments your thoughts.